So there are rumors and claims circulating that Showtime are about to bow out of boxing. This is unconfirmed as far as I'm aware, but this is the word on the grapevine. People are saying that Showtime aren't necessarily going to remove themselves from boxing completely. They might still do one-off, occasional pay-per-views for really mega fights. But in terms of their regular boxing content, the word is that that's going to end. I think it would be a shame because I like the variety in boxing with different broadcasters. I know it's a double-edged sword because sometimes broadcasters don't want their cash cow fighters to fight on other networks, and that can sometimes prevent fights from happening. But there are also plenty of instances where networks are happy to work together. HBO and Showtime work together on many occasions. ESPN and Fox, ESPN and Showtime have worked together on many occasions. I mean, look at the Deontay Wilder-Tyson Fury fights. I think DAZN might have worked with other networks before, right? But on the upside, fewer networks will mean less politics. Fights should be able to get made easier if there's only ESPN and DAZN doing regular boxing in the United States in terms of major networks. And how long can ESPN last? Will DAZN and Matchroom's dream of having a monopoly in the American market actually come true? If it does, color me surprised. I'll hold my hands up. I never expected anything like that to happen. But if it does happen, it just goes to show how much of a niche sport boxing is in the United States. It just doesn't have the pull that it does in places like the United Kingdom, at least consistently. Yeah, they can do big one-off events, but in terms of the week in, week out boxing, it doesn't garner the kind of interest that it does in places like the UK, where fans really get behind their local fighters. You'll get local fighters who have never fought on world level packing out arenas, 7,000, 10,000 people on a regular basis. That kind of thing is pretty rare in the United States. You've really got to make waves on the world scene and be in big fights against other established fighters before you start getting any kind of following in America, in most cases. Little bit different if you're a Latino fighter, but for most other ethnicities, that's how it is. And in this regard, here's a bit of good news, or potentially good news, because this is another rumor that's floating around. And that is that the Canelo Alvarez Jermell Charlo fight is actually going to be on DAZN outside of the US. Eddie Hearn was actually asked about this in a recent interview, and he kept very tight-lipped. He said, we'll see what happens. That'll be a massive coup for DAZN if it does take place on their network, because obviously they lost Canelo to PBC, but to then retain him, at least for this fight, internationally outside of the United States, that's a big consolation prize. Do they have DAZN in Mexico? I'm not sure. If they do, again, should do huge numbers over there. I know DAZN have just done some deal in Japan. Look, DAZN has been very successful in many markets, not so much with boxing, but with other sports. There's somebody in my Element group, a British guy, originally from Nottingham, but lives in Germany now. Been living there for many years. And he says DAZN is huge in Germany. I remember him telling me about the DAZN package that he has and all kinds of different sports on there, like real top tier stuff. So DAZN are very successful in other markets with other sports, but boxing is the one sport that they've yet to crack in Britain and America. Obviously, they've made inroads, but there are still many other power players, right? In the UK in particular, TNT Sports is very serious competition for DAZN. In fact, you might even argue that they're above DAZN in the UK market when it comes to boxing, as it stands right now. Sky Sports, well, with Ben Shalom at the helm, is a bit iffy for them at the moment. And in the United States, ESPN and Showtime, but particularly Showtime, are doing better than DAZN at the moment in terms of the quality of content. Showtime have had a fantastic year in that regard. But now, as I say, this rumor is circulating that from 2024 on, Showtime are going to bow out. And so maybe 2023 was like a last-ditch effort by Showtime. Now, perhaps the bosses, the people who don't care about boxing, the people at the very top of the CBS corporation, I think that's who owns Showtime these days, they said, nah, not good enough. We don't like these profit margins. So could Steven Espinoza be about to join the unemployment line? Obviously, I'm being facetious. A guy with his kind of experience is not going to find it difficult to get employed elsewhere. Maybe even a different position within that corporation that owns Showtime. But yeah, definitely interesting times because it was a big deal when HBO bowed out of boxing. To have Showtime bow out as well? Wow. And if ESPN go the same way, because Eddie Hearn was saying that ESPN aren't going to renew Bob Arum's contract that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to bow out of boxing. Maybe they'll hire a new promoter. And of course, this is assuming Eddie Hearn's actually telling the truth or he knows what he's talking about. Perhaps he doesn't in this instance. But if that were to happen, if ESPN were to bow out as well, then literally DAZN have a monopoly in the American boxing market. And if they end up with that monopoly, to tie it all in, yeah, it's good for fans, but it's bad for fighters. Because when you got a monopoly, you can start paying fighters less. And as well as that, charging fans more, right? I mean, you guys should know. There are many reasons why monopolies are generally bad. Would DAZN be different? Once they had that monopoly, would they finally implement what they promised in the beginning? That there would be the Netflix of sport? Because they've very much moved away from that model over the past year or so. Doing pay-per-views and all this kind of stuff, not good. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Let me know what you guys think about all this in the comment section below.